It's Tuesday, June 7th. Thanks for joining us here on Real Talk. Ryan Jesperson, John Hicks with you in just a second. An exclusive leadership announcement. The United Conservative Party leadership race about to add a contender. The announcement will be made right here on the show. We're also going to go live to France today. A friend of the show, Kristen Rayworth, was touring Juno Beach with her dad. I'm sure a once-in-a-lifetime type trip, especially considering her company being there with her dad right around the anniversary of D-Day. She's going to check in with us. We talked to author and historian Don Levers yesterday about the 78th anniversary of D-Day. Kristen Rayworth will bring us up to speed. What was the experience like being there today? What were the Europeans, what were the French folks over there saying about Canadian involvement on that June 6th, 1944, obviously monumental development through World War II. Plus, our hometown Edmonton Oilers run into an absolute wall. The Colorado Avalanche sweeping the Oil in 4 straight to move on to a Stanley Cup final that a lot of people have been, quite frankly, looking forward to. They want to see the Avs crash into either the Lightning or the Rangers.
It's going to be crazy.
And they're going to get it. It's going to be an amazing series. Andrew Walker, host of The Hedge right here, a Relay podcast, is going to join us, and we'll wrap up the show with that. Plus, it's Tuesday, which means we'll get to the leading edge. This show kicks off every morning by recognizing the partnership of our friends at Bitcoin Well. And I maybe don't talk enough to you about what the Bitcoin Well team has for you with regards to resources and learning opportunities. If you go to their website, bitcoinwell.com, and then you click on Learn. They've got this Bitcoin Academy. You can enroll in it, learn all about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin in particular. Watch the video, and then there's one video in particular I want to recommend. Check this out. I'm showing my screen to you, bitcoinwell.com. I always talk to you about Benny. Benny's kind of the front-facing expert there at Bitcoin Well, and Benny's got a great Bitcoin for Beginners video you can check out. All of that at bitcoinwell.com, and of course, you can always link to them under the sponsors tab on our website, ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
All right, well, sometimes we're talking federal politics. Sometimes we're talking about provincial politics across the country, as we did yesterday. Great conversations about the results of the Ontario election. Premier Doug Ford, the progressive conservative leader there, obviously with a big mandate, a second term, an even bigger majority government. And political commentators across the country can't help but compare their jurisdictions to Alberta, right? Yesterday, the conversation was around how did Doug Ford manage to convince the electorate to give him that second term, while at the same time Alberta's premier handing in his resignation, triggering a leadership race with Alberta's United Conservatives. Everybody across the country is keeping an eye on who it will be, this race to lead Alberta's Conservatives into the next election. This morning, we welcomed the newest contender to the race, making her announcement officially right here on Real Talk, a longtime Conservative MLA, Leela Aheer. Good morning to you, and thanks for making time for us. Welcome to the show.
And a huge congratulations to you, too. I'm so happy. Oh, my gosh. I can't believe you're standing right now.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to give a lot of credit to my wife, Carrie, who's doing most of the heavy lifting, as is often the case. So we're so excited to welcome little baby Noah into the household. So I might be a little bit delirious when I talk to you, just a tiny little bit sleep deprived. How are you feeling, though, this morning? You're making your announcement right now. And it's going to get a lot of people talking. What convinced you? How long did you know that you wanted to throw your hat into this race?
I've had the privilege, Ryan, of speaking to so many people. I think that I wasn't 100% sure, just because you need to talk to everybody and you need to see where people's heads are at and see what they want and what you have to offer. But just the leadership review is so important to me. And then to have the leadership race, to be able to engage with folks, it's just such a privilege. I'm so excited. I think I've spoken to you about this before. The opportunity to engage with Albertans and earn their trust back and show them our heartbeat and who we are, and to be able to be truly accountable and humble and honest, and even at times apologetic. We're going to make mistakes. That's human nature. But just to show folks that we have the capacity to be able to be a mature and wonderful and thoughtful government. And I'm absolutely out of my mind. I'm ecstatic to be able to be with you this morning, to be able to announce this, and to be able to have put a team together. It's a huge privilege, and I didn't take it lightly. Like, you have to talk to your family. Well, as you know, there's just so much to it. And your family goes through so much when you're an elected official. It's just the way that it is. So to take that leap, I really needed to make sure that they were ready for it too.
What did they say to you? I mean, they know what they're getting in for. There's going to be barbs thrown. There's going to be hand grenades lobbed. And one of the interesting or the unique dynamics about a leadership race is typically, although I'll acknowledge, and you and I will probably talk about maybe the big tent angle of what a conservative leader is going to have to do, what a leader will have to do to keep this party united. But the interesting dynamic of a leadership race, it's people typically whose views might align on a number of things, but they're trying to point out why they're a better candidate than everybody else. And then after the leadership race, everybody's got to get back together on the same team. It's a bit of a strange exercise.
Correct. Well, my husband the beautiful advice that comes from him is that people can lob things at you, but you don't have to react that way. Right? You said it exactly right. This is a challenge to actually unify and bring folks together, and not because it's a top-down approach, but because we're actually engaging with Albertans and hearing what they need, being able to actually read and understand and feel how people are doing, because people are in a lot of pain, they're hurting, but there's also, on the flip side, there's so much optimism, right? And so when you're looking at it from that perspective, the optimism is such a beautiful part to be able to jump off at, but you have to be able to recognize where people are at as well too, and be able to answer those questions.
You're talking about optimism. You're talking about positivity. Does this party have some reputational damage to reverse? Is there some work to be done on that front?
100%. The entire leadership race for me is about regaining Albertans' trust. We owe that to people. We owe them the opportunity to be able to get in front of them and explain to them who we are, and to be able to be truthful about the mistakes that have been made, because there's been plenty. And I think that happens with any party. That's not just us, but this is a golden opportunity to be able to earn people's trust back, and earn trust back in the institutions too, right? And think about the engagement part and being able to be in front of people, especially post-COVID. I mean, we're still being careful. Obviously, we have to be vigilant about all things COVID, but to be able to attend events and be with people and earn their trust back and listen. We need to listen, Ryan. That's probably the most important thing that I can say. And I mean, I survive and thrive and crave those kinds of conversations. It's my favorite part. And even if the conversations are difficult, I appreciate it so much, because I learn a lot from people from all sides, because good ideas come from everywhere. It's not just from us.
It's been interesting to watch commentary around this leadership race, and it's still, I think, relatively speaking, in the early stages. We're still expecting announcements from other candidates. People are taking a look at the names of some of the usual suspects, right? People have thrown their name in the mix, and they're going, well, I mean, what's a whole lot different about a lot of these folks, right? Like, for example, people are trying to figure out, now there are some differences, not to say there aren't, but what's the difference between a Brian Jean and a Danielle Smith? Or what's the difference between a Brian Jean and a Travis Taves? Or, people are rumored, other ministers, for example, other cabinet ministers, to be considering a run. What do you bring to the table that nobody else does? What sets your campaign apart? How are you most markedly a different or unique candidate for leader of this party?
I am compelled to give back, Brian. My entire premise for being here is because this province has given me so much. I got involved in politics because of kids, right? There's just no ulterior motive other than to make sure that we pave that way for that next generation, but also to be grounded and to leave our egos at the door. The most important thing that I think I've probably learned through, I've been in this for about 7 years now, is that Albertans are savvy and intelligent and competent people. I mean, we will survive and thrive in this province despite what government does. It's just the way that we are. But I'm compelled to give back. And my dad, when he came in 1963, was a huge patriot. And my mom, who's third generation Canadian. These are people that are, they're seniors now, and they've given so much to their province. But my dad always told me that our responsibility was to give back and to be able to provide a sense and an understanding to who we are, and to be as humble as possible. I mean, he challenges me on that all of the time, both my dad and my father-in-law, actually. And so that, to me, I think is probably the most important. And I think it's very important to the average person as well, too. We're severely normal Albertans. We want to be able to have real conversations, We have, ballet dads and soccer moms and families of all different kinds of backgrounds, and and in family in itself, those family values for whatever your family looks like, however you're raising your family, to be able to talk to people about how they do that and what we can do to support them. It's not about what we have a collective responsibility to be able to grow this province and put community back together. But I want to know what I can do for people. How can I help? What is my role? We are stewards of these dollars that people work so hard for. And I want to be able to be a part of those decisions and be able to help and to be able to remove gatekeepers and be available to people.
If you're just tuning in live streaming on the Mixlr audio app, we're talking to Leela Aheer, who just moments ago has announced her candidacy. She wants to be the next leader of the United Conservative Party. She wants to take this party into the next election. An interesting question here, Leela, from Dwayne, who's watching us live on YouTube right now. He says, what does Leela think will happen when oil prices go back in the gutter? A lot of people are saying right now, it almost feels like we joke as Albertans in kind of a macabre kind of a way, in kind of a dark way, right? You've seen the bumper sticker, dear Lord, please give us one more boom, and we promise not to piss it away. And it kind of feels like we're seeing it right now. It's back up over $100 again. The province is flush, at least for right now again, but we get a little twitchy, don't we? Because we know long-term where this goes. So what's your plan look like for Alberta's economic recovery? Not just short-term, but the prosperity angle longer term. What does Alberta look like future-wise through your eyes?
Well, I think twitchy is probably the right word. And even, with balancing the budget, which I'm super grateful for, a lot of things led to that capacity to be able to do that. I'm preaching to the choir here, but what we learned throughout COVID and about the rebound and about the economy of the province, so much of that has to do with being able to have people feel safe and compelled to come here, and that we have we were attracting talent and folks. And part of that is advanced education. We have to make sure that our young people have the education that they need. We want them to stay here, right? To be able to have jobs here, to be able to work in our province. And oil and gas, just keep in mind, so many of those jobs are also transferable. We see the film sector. The film industry is having their very, very best year ever, and those jobs are transferable. We are seeing carbon capture, seeing amazing opportunities throughout all sorts of technologies that have everything to do with alongside of oil and gas. And also our manufacturing in our province, looking at small business and our GDP that's related to that. In Alberta, for everyone who are small business people, we have 80 women entrepreneurs. It is way higher than the national average. So if you think about the compelling arguments for being able to make sure that people are able to stay in our province and be able to do their businesses here and support those businesses, and small businesses is the heartbeat of this province. So I think there's so many things. I could go on and on, but there may be, hopefully we'll have more opportunities to talk about the platform and what our ideas are going forward. But that's just a few ideas off the top of my head.
How do you think, you could take this answer in any direction you want. I don't know why I'm automatically thinking of hospitality, but there are so many different industries that were hammered over the past couple of years. And unfortunately for some people, the dream died on the vine. Some people were put in a position where they had to shut down maybe their family business or had to take a step back. Some people, entrepreneurs in particular, probably haven't paid themselves, Leela, for the last year and a half, 2 years. When you take a look around, I know you're kicking off your campaign today, so you'll be traveling the province. It all kind of starts now, minus the stuff that's been happening behind the scenes. But what are you noticing with regards to how business or how the economic reality, how people's reality has changed? What's it different with regards to how it looks now versus what it might have looked like in February, March of 2020?
Yeah. So we all know people who lost everything in COVID. I have girlfriends personally in my riding who were hanging on literally right to the end of their businesses. And during COVID, and I think it's you do as much as you can to try and help. I don't know if we'll ever know. It's one of those things we'll have to look at. And I think all governments across the globe, and particularly in Canada, will have to look and see how that went. But one thing I have to tell you, Ryan, on the flip side, is that we also saw many businesses open and start and be able to be successful despite COVID, despite mistakes that were made, especially on our part for our communications of what was happening with COVID. I don't know if you notice out there right now the optimism and how businesses are going. But to tell you the truth, Ryan, even with optimism and with the way that things are going, it's going to take a long time for people to catch up. I mean, I'm a small business owner myself. You don't pay yourself for a long time, even under normal circumstances. So COVID threw everybody a real, threw them for a loop is an understatement. But understand this, you're talking about some of the most resilient and the most incredibly resourceful human beings on the planet in this province. We know how to get things done even under terrible circumstances. I think what we'll probably hear out on the campaign trail is what we need to do differently, what we could have done better, and looking at the supports going forward, because the impact of COVID hasn't ended yet, right? We're going to see that to continue. But I look towards the folks of this province to explain to me and direct me to help understand where our role is with that and what we do to help companies and organizations. And especially now that we understand how COVID moves, how we stay open under these circumstances. What are our next moves should, we see another COVID season come up here in October, November, or flu season? What do we do to keep businesses open? Because at this point in time, I think that's everybody's biggest fear, is that something could happen to shut down the world again and shut down businesses. So I'm really, really super excited to talk to folks about that and get their advice, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for advice from people.
I talked to official opposition leader Rachel Notley back on May 25th on this show, just a short time ago, and she talked about her plan to, quote, save healthcare, which is obviously kind of a bold assertion to make. Everybody knows that the healthcare system across the country, and we'll talk about in our own backyard here in Alberta, has been strained for obvious reasons over the past couple of years, but there's been a strained relationship as well between unions, nurses, doctors writ large, and this government, the Conservative government under Premier Jason Kenney. What would be your plan with regards to healthcare, with regards to stopping talented professionals from leaving the province, with regards to not just retaining talent with nurses, doctors, researchers, triage? I mean, we could go on and on, paramedics, et cetera, not just retaining them, but attracting them as well. What would be your plan when it comes to healthcare?
Well, if we look at the ability to be able to bring people into province, especially from out of province, to become doctors, and I mean, we have to increase spaces in universities first for nurses in particular. There is not enough spaces, so those spaces have to be increased. But the second thing is that we have to also be able to open up Alberta to bringing in doctors from, across the country, obviously, but also from across the world. And there's work being done right now on those professional designations, because it's really, really difficult for a person out of country to be able to come into our country. And especially, and the other thing is, into Canada and to Alberta, but also rural placement of doctors. We've opened up some more spaces, but more needs to be done on that as well too. We see quite a bit when doctors come out to rural areas and do their practical and their workout in those areas, many of them stay. So being able to get more of those spaces opened up as well too. But the third thing I would say is that a huge apology to be issued to our doctors and nurses. I mean, I think I've spent the last 2 years talking to doctors and nurses and frontline workers across the province, just explaining my deep gratitude because of the way that we proceeded and how they felt as a result of the direction that we had gone. There's not enough apology in the world. There's not enough that we can say in order for those incredible people to understand how grateful we are. And it's not an apology that needs to stop, Ryan. It's one that needs to continue. And then we need to show proof on the other side that we're willing to stand behind our words and that we're willing to be the people to be able to unite and bring people together and not use government as an opportunity to divide